Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Trash Can. It has now been a full week since UFC 329, Conor McGregor vs. Max Holloway 2 happened. The dust has settled, the smoke is now cleared, and I wanted to give my opinion on three of the fights that were on the card. I'm only going to talk about three of the fights because they are the ones that I think are the most important to talk about. First one being Gable Steveson versus Alicia Ellison, and the other two being the co-main event between Benoit Saint Denis versus Paddy Pimblett, and of course Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. We all know how the main event went, but I'm still going to talk about it. So let's just go ahead and get into Gable Stevenson's fight against Alicia Ellison. This was Stevenson's debut in the UFC. He gets the win in round one by knockout. And this was it was a good performance by Stevenson. There were a few things that he definitely needs to improve on. Towards the very beginning of the fight, he throws a kick and knocks himself off balance and falls to the canvas. It wasn't a knockout. It's not like Alicia Ellison punched him and then Stevenson went down. But there are just some things that Stevenson still has to work on. There were some people, like Joe Rogan said this on the Joe Rogan experience when he had Gable Steveson on a while ago, and he was saying that Steveson is already at the top of the heavyweight class with people like Ngannou, John Jones, and Tom Aspinall. I think Steveson is not there. He needs to work up to that. But this is a good starting point with this win against Alicia Ellison, and I'm excited to see where he goes. I'm not entirely sure who you put him against next. I've seen some people say maybe Josh Hockett. I do not think that would be a good idea. I think Hockett would beat Stevenson. So I don't really know who you put him against. Derek Lewis was at number 9, but he's not anymore after the White House card, so probably not Lewis. They'll find an opponent for him. I'm not really sure who you who you should put him against, but definitely not anyone in the top 5 yet. Like, no, Aspinall, no, Cyril Gahn. I couldn't remember his name for a second. Maybe you do Alex Pereira. I could see that because Pereira did get knocked out in the White House card against Gahn. So maybe Pereira would be one for him, but I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, good win. Now we can move on to Paddy Pimblett versus Benoit Saint Denis. Paddy Pimblett got a submission win over Benoit Saint Denis, and it was a Darce choke, I believe. Absolute masterclass in grappling. And Paddy Pimblett's the real deal. I do not think that he gets another title shot, like, not another title shot, but another go at Gaethje, since Gaethje is now the lightweight champion. I don't think you do that rematch yet after this win. Maybe you put Paddy against someone like Ilia Topuria, could definitely be a good matchup for him to do. If he wins that one, you probably do put him in there up against Gaethje. Could maybe do Charles Oliveira. Maybe you do Arman Tsarukyan. The UFC definitely doesn't like Arman Tsarukyan, which is understandable. Arman is a very unlikable guy with a lot of antics that make him very difficult to like. So if Paddy were to, go in there and absolutely destroy Arman, completely knock him out, then the UFC has an excuse to sort of drop Arman down in the rankings and keep him away from the title for basically the rest of his career if they wanted to, which definitely seems like that's what Dana White wants. I won't necessarily say that I agree with that, but I understand it because of how, I wouldn't say wild, but some of Arman's antics have definitely put him into a rough spot, specifically with him pulling out of the Islam fight. Regardless, great win for Paddy. I do think that maybe you do the Ilia Topuria fight. There are some other matchups you could do. Maybe you even put him against Max Holloway if Holloway goes back down to lightweight, which he most likely will. I don't see Holloway staying at welterweight. And he shouldn't. He has been successful in lightweight, and that is where he should go. But good win for Patty. Now we will talk about the main event. Everyone knows what happened. Conor McGregor comes sprinting out at Holloway and does a jumping switch kick. No idea why he chose to do that. And we aren't even sure what the injury is, actually. We aren't sure if it's a torn ACL. I've seen some people say it might be a meniscus, but regardless, he injured his leg. He got up a couple of times and tried to keep the fight going, but the ref called it off, and it was the right move. Conor could not get up and fight, so it was the right move. And everyone has obviously been, talking about these like conspiracy theories that, oh, he was injured before and he knew it and he was scamming. That just isn't the case. I think he just threw a stupid kick that he shouldn't have ever thrown, especially at his age and at 170 when he spent his entire career in the lower weight classes. And he just got injured. It was a fluke. He's older. He's had a lot of injuries, specifically below the waist, throughout his career. So I don't think that it was anything like, oh, I know I have this injury and let me scam everyone out of their money. So Holloway gets the win. Good for him, but he made a lot of money. But it's not like it really means anything because Conor got injured less than 5 seconds into the fight, and there was basically no fight. Like, Holloway didn't even get injured. MMA Guru put out something really funny on Twitter saying that the UFC should have just called Paddy Pimblett to go out there and go fight Holloway. And honestly, I think that would have been absolutely insane if they did that. But I think that would have been super entertaining. Pimblett got the win in less than 2 minutes. I'm not entirely sure how much time. Let me actually check. It was 52 seconds, so it was less than 1 minute. Petty was definitely not tired. He could have gone out there and fought Holloway. Maybe I'll even do a video talking about what I think would have happened if Petty would have went out there and fought Holloway after they carted McGregor out. Regardless, I'm not sure what you do with McGregor. Honestly, I think he shouldn't fight again. He has already said that he will recover and return for his last fight on his UFC contract. I don't think that's a good idea. I do not think that McGregor should fight again. I just don't. He's had so many injuries, and, after this one, who even wants to see him return again? I mean, it'll draw a lot of eyeballs, but I personally would be like, do I really want to wait to watch him? Maybe you do something where, like, he comes back and does his last fight, but I would personally say don't make it a main event. Which I know sounds crazy when you're talking about McGregor, but maybe do McGregor versus, like, Michael Chandler. They're both, on their last legs. They're not going to keep fighting. Maybe you finally do that fight, put them as a co-main event, and maybe you have something like Paddy Pimblett versus Max Holloway, or Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria, or maybe even a Paddy versus Justin Gaethje rematch as the main event. It doesn't even have to have Paddy Pimblett involved. You could also put that as the fight on the co-main under the Cyril Gane versus Tom Aspinall rematch. I don't think Conor would be recovered by that point, because I do remember seeing something that said Tom Aspinall is starting to train again, so he will probably be ready to fight way sooner than McGregor has recovered. Regardless, I'm not really sure what you do with McGregor. I do not think you do the Holloway rematch. Holloway still has plenty left in the tank, and he shouldn't be wasting his career to, wait for another McGregor fight. The interest is gone. It's over. and I would say that just don't do the rematch. Holloway should move on, and McGregor, maybe he fights someone like Michael Chandler, like I said earlier. You could, I mean, if you wanted to defy all logic, you could do something like just throw McGregor to the wolves and have him fight Islam Makhachev, but Islam would absolutely destroy McGregor. But you would get, that not iconic fight, but it would be like the spirit of McGregor versus Khabib again, because Islam is obviously part of Team Khabib, and I think that would be, interesting. They would never do that, nor should they, because Islam is the champion, at least for now, until he fights Ian Gary, because then, belt can switch hands. If he does lose the Ian Gary fight, maybe then you do put Islam against McGregor. And, that would be a massive paycheck for the entire UFC. But Islam, I think, is going to beat Ian Gary. And then I'm not sure what you do with McGregor, but I think he's going to stay at 170. I don't think he's going to cut the weight to go down to lightweight again. Regardless, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's very fun to think about it and talk about it. Thank you all so very much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Have a good night, guys.